So here's what's on your exit ticket. It's completely finished. I actually changed it a little bit, so you'll be the first class to truly know what's going to be on. We are going to go over arithmetic sequences. So what we did Monday, there is one sort of conceptual question. I mean, it's kind of like, do you understand the material? Everything else is just pull the right number out of the sequence, put it in the right place, do the math. I mean, should not be difficult to do well on that section of the exit ticket. Then there are two questions that are from the domain range stuff that we did. So I will review those on Friday before the exit ticket. So right before the exit ticket.
Why do we have an exit ticket every freaking week?
Because I need to see if you're getting the material. That's one reason. But also, the exit tickets are the only thing that saves some of your grades.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so in this particular sequence, if I give you something, or I should say when I give you something like this on the exit ticket, I'm going to ask you questions just like this. Like, this is exactly what you're going to have to do. Willie, Bud, telling you exactly what you're going to have to do on an exit ticket. This will be a good time to pay attention. I'll give you a sequence of numbers. And then I'm not going to say, fine, I'll spell it right on the exit ticket. I'm not going to say, find the first number, the 10th number. I'm going to give you the notation. You have to understand. That's the only thing you have to understand to be able to do okay on the exit ticket. Is what do the variables stand for? What are the numbers? Like, what's the notation mean? That's it. You understand that, the math is not difficult. Some of it's not math at all. You're just pulling a number out and writing it down. So in a sequence of numbers, if you have a pattern of addition, and I say if because there are some questions on there where you may not have a pattern of addition. That means it's not an arithmetic sequence, and we're going to go over how to tell if one is or isn't today. If it is, though, if you already know it is, and if I write this stuff down here, then that's implying that it is. You wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't an arithmetic sequence, if there wasn't already a pattern. So once you know it is, you have to understand what in the world am I asking for right there? What am I asking for? You didn't figure it out? Give me your help out. What am I asking for in that first one? A1, what's that mean? Yeah, all this means, the A, the letter A, means you are going to pull some number from the sequence. Maybe it's 14, maybe it's 17, maybe it's 20, 23, 26. Maybe it's a number that would be farther out if you kept going and adding by 3. You're going to be pulling a number out. That's going to wind up being your answer. The little number guy, the subscript it's called, the little number guy is telling you which number are you going to pull. Are you going to pull the first one, the second one, the third, fourth, fifth, whatever. So this little number guy is saying 1. So which number do you think we're pulling? First number. That's what the 1 means. A1 is the first term. So we're going to pull the first term, and we just write it. Again, no math. There are like 3 questions where that's all you do. You just pull a number out of the sequence. I didn't ask you this, but what if I would have put this? What if I would have said D equals? A lot of you actually wrote that as the answer. Yes, sir. Yeah, how much did we add to go from one number to the next number? And it is from 14 to 17, but it's actually from any number. I could have chosen those 2 numbers. Should be the same thing. If it's an arithmetic sequence. If it's not the same thing, then it's not, there's no pattern, there's not an arithmetic sequence. So that's when we would say it's not even an arithmetic sequence, and we would just write no, which we'll get to that in a second. So I would say, well, what did I add to go from 23 to 26? Angelica, what did I add? 3, right? That ain't hard. I will tell you, it's not always that easy. Sometimes you're going to have, like on the exit ticket, problems that have decimals in it. May not be quite as easy to just look at it and say, oh yeah, I see what the pattern is. So if that's the case, here's the formula, sort of, to find what the value of D is. D equals, you take any 2 numbers next to each other, and it is the right number subtract the left number. There, that right there. Right number subtract the left number. Did I share my screen? I really hope I did.
You're sharing your screen.
Is that what that means, or does it just mean I'm recording
You're sharing your
when it's
screen.
red?
You're sharing and recording.
You're doing both.
All right.
You're doing both.
Positive.
Yes.
Yes, because
All right.
I watched you press the
You
button
just
of sharing your screen.
Oh, that's why. Okay. I couldn't remember if I hit that little sharing button.
On.
Because some people said, yeah, you're sharing it if it's got the little red outline, but I can't remember. But then there was another thing that meant I was recording. But okay. I hope so. All right, so that's how you would calculate out the value for D if the numbers were more difficult. Next year, it will be more difficult. You're going to have fractions. You may have a series of numbers, and there'll be fractions in there. So you'll have to know how to subtract fractions, although actually you won't because there's calculators that do fractions for you. No. So we'll get back to that question in about 5 minutes. The last thing then is, what does that A201 mean? Lupita, can you tell me what A201 means? We said A means what? Can you tell me what that means? Not sure? All right, you need to write it again. We just went over it. You don't know what A201 means right now, you better write it down. You already had a chance to write it down when I went over that one. It means the same exact thing, only you got a different number there. Willie, what's it mean? A201. Colton, what's it mean? A201, what's that mean? What in the world am I saying when I write A201 equals? What's that? Oh, can you rephrase it and say, what am I looking for? What am I asking you to give me by writing that? Yeah, that's exactly right. I am asking this. What is the 201st number in the sequence? That's all I'm asking. In this case, I was asking, what is the first number? That's why there's a 1 there. We already had that, so we just pulled it out. In this case, I'm asking you, what's the 201st number? We don't have that, but we said there's a way to figure it out. There's a formula, which we're going to use in a second. Real quick, before we do that, what's the answer to this? What's the answer to that, Valentino? 26, you said. Yeah. Yeah. First term, second. So this is asking me, what is the fifth term, fifth number in the sequence of numbers? Well, we don't have to calculate that because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's already given to us. So that one we just write down. 26. If I asked you for the 8th one, you wouldn't have it, but you could just say, oh, well, I could just add 3 more times and I'd be on the 8th term. So that one, there's actually a couple ways you could calculate that. You could use the formula that we're going to use because this number is really, really large, or you could also just add 3 over and over again until you get to the term. Either way works, but it would take a really long time to do this one by adding 3 over and over and over again. So here's the formula. If you weren't here yesterday, you need to write this down. If you were here yesterday, make sure you have it. It's this right here. You don't have to write anything else because I'm gonna go over what everything means. If you're already here, you should already have what everything else means, but just in case. That's called the explicit formula. We did learn another formula on Monday. I'm not gonna go over the other formula today. If you want to go back and watch the video, it's recorded. This is the main one you're going to see on the exit. So copy that down real quick if you didn't already have it. We already talked kind of about what some of it means, like the A1. We already said A1 means we need the first number in the sequence, so we know what that means already. We'll talk about what the other ones mean after everybody copies it down.
I feel like word spread.
confused with that?
Yeah. We avoided it.
When you're done, just kind of put your pencil down so I can see that you're done. I just heard really loud music.
You think about the bells? Turn that.
Oh, is that what that was? Oh, when she walks, it makes it. It was louder if she was coming toward me, and I got to find her. Didn't think about that. I have never seen bells do that. All right, so it looks like everybody's done copying. So let's go over what everything in here means. Let's talk about this first. We already said what A1 means. Again, A1 will always mean that same thing. Doesn't matter if it's just in the formula, doesn't matter if I'm asking for it from a sequence of numbers you already have. A1 is the first number in the sequence, always. So in this case, if I'm using that sequence of numbers in blue up top, here, what is the A1 value? Can you see it? It's written really, really big. Yeah, it's 13. You should not have any issues if I write what is A1. Like if I write this on the exit ticket, everybody better get those points. You just look at the sequence of numbers and you take the first number out. There's no math involved. However you need to explain that to yourself. If reading this first term of the sequence doesn't make sense, then write down what makes sense to you, because that is what you need to be able to do for part of the exit ticket. Or if I asked you for a different number, like I just did A5 earlier, we pulled the fifth number out. If I said A3 here, Katerina, what would A3 be? If I ask you this, what's that? It's a third number in the sequence. If I ask you something that's not showing because it's farther out, then you got to figure out what it would be. You can either keep adding 3 if it's not that far out, or if it is that far out, that's what this formula does.
Wait, so then what would D do?
What is D we said? What's that stand for? What does the variable D stand for? Tristan? Yeah, what are we adding every time? What's the pattern? That's what D stands for. So if that's what D stands for, and that's what A1 stands for, we just need to understand what is this A sub n and the n thing. How do we use those? Can anybody think they can explain that? Or I explain.
Now you have to explain it.
All right. It's a little more complex, so just listen first, and then I'll answer questions and we'll use it to solve the bell work. I'm going to get rid of that stuff. So we said A means I'm pulling a number out from the sequence. That's kind of what the A part means. This means I'm going to be pulling some number from the sequence. Again, it might be one I already have. It might be one I have to calculate that's way farther down in the sequence. N is telling me which one to pull. Just like if it's a 1, that means pull the first one. If it's a 3, it means pull the third one. If you see this, if that's written right there, I haven't told you which number to pull yet. So it's an unknown. The number that you want to pull is an unknown. All right? We don't know which number to pull, if that's what I gave you. If all I said is find A sub n. So let me ask you this. What could I do with that? If that's on the quiz right there, what could you do? I didn't tell you what number to pull, so you can't just pull out a number. You can't say it's 13, you can't say it's 16, you can't say it's 19.
An unknown number.
It's the number we're going to pull is unknown, but let me ask you this. We know the formula for that, right? It's right there where the box is, the red box is. Do I know anything that's in that formula? If I'm using these numbers right here, do I know any of those pieces in that formula? 1 will always be in that formula. Let's subtract 1. What else can I fill in from that formula? Again, you're using the blue numbers up top. We know what the value of D is, right? We have some numbers. We can figure out what D is. So I know D is going to be 3. So I could write, we'll just put it all the way at the end. We know 3 is going to be at the end because that's going to be the value of D. So this D is that number right there. I was able to figure that out. What else can I do? I know something else. What else do I know?
That parentheses. There we go.
You got a line.
Wait, can I go to the hallway?
Okay. I'm going to call on. Who do I want to call on? Liliana. Do I know anything else in that formula besides the value of D? Look at it. What's the formula? Go through each piece of it, see if you know any of them. I haven't told you which number you want to pull out, so there's nothing you can do with this. Because I haven't told you which number to pull out, so it's A to the N. So you're telling me anything else that you think you can fill in that's in that formula. What's the first part of the formula? Do you know that? What does A1 stand for? Do we know the first number? Then we know it. If you know parts of a formula, and this isn't just for this lesson, this is always. If you know parts of the formula, like you know what numbers they are, get rid of the variable. We don't want a variable if we can put a number there instead. We know A1. So we'd write 13 there instead of A1. Then I would say plus parentheses. Do I know what N is? Anybody even tell me what in the world N stands for? Like what would N represent? What do you think? Some number? Do we know what the number is? N is an unknown. I'll just give you the quick, short, easy version. These are always the same. Whatever is here is going to be there. If it's a variable, if it's N, then it's going to be N in both places. If it's a number, it's going to be the same number in both places. So write that down. Always the same. Always the same. No exception to that, ever. A variable in an equation is always the same number. If it's in an equation multiple places, it's always the same number. Or it's always the same variable if it's. So we would just write N, and the subtract 1 never changes. It's always subtract 1. So if I asked you what is A sub N, you can't solve it because I haven't told you which number you're pulling out yet. So you don't have no idea. You don't know if it's one of these four, if it's another one, but you can fill out pieces of it because you did know for the value of D, you did know the value of the first term, the A1. So that would be what we would do with this formula. If I said what's A sub N, just fill in what you can, and then that's all you can do. All right, so now though, if I give you more information, and if I say, well, what about A201? What's the value of that? We can solve for that because the original formula would have been, oh, can I? Yeah, we can do this. So the original formula, A sub N, would be what? Using these numbers now. Well, I'm going to go with bets up. What's the first thing I can write? Boy, I can't understand. What'd you say? I think you're saying it, so I'm going to write it. We can write the A sub 1 because that's the first part of the formula. A sub 1 is the first number. So we can write 14. Now, if I'm just trying to figure out the kind of generic formula, I don't know which number to pull yet. It would be just N subtract 1 because these have to be the same. And what's the difference, we said? What goes next? Willie. Now this is times 3. Remember that. If you don't have math in between those parentheses and in between a number or a variable, really, it's multiplication. So you got to remember what the math is because you're going to have to do that in a minute. So now all we have to do to solve for A201 is if I'm going from this formula and now I'm trying to figure out A sub 201, I just changed n to 201. So I now told you which term you want. All you got to do then is just plug in the 201, both places where you see the variable n. So it would still be 14 plus, now it would be 201, because remember, these always have to be the same. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff, so it's getting a little clear.
Mr. Gill, that was probably one of the best explanations of how to do that I've heard for a while.
Oh boy, thank you. So that would now be your formula, and there are no variables left. Because the only thing we didn't know originally is which term we wanted, but then in this question here, I told you which term I want. So now you can solve it. So you just do the math. I make the math pretty easy. You can use a calculator. I'm fine with that. But if you'll notice, what is 201 subtract 1? 201 subtract 1 is what? 200, right? That's pretty simple math. 200 or 201 subtract 1 is pretty simple math. Well, then, if that's what I give you, what is 200 times 3? Again, pretty simple math. You really don't need a calculator. So that's 600. We still need to add the 14. So the final answer for A with a little 201, A sub 201, so the 200 first term would be 614. Get rid of all of that. So that's how you calculate a specific term out of a sequence. And you're going to practice that quite a bit today, so if you're not getting it still, don't worry, you're going to practice. Plug in whatever the term I'm asking for is just going to be repeated there. We already said that's the same number always. Whatever the first term is goes here. Subtract 1 is just part of the formula, so that'll always go there. So the only thing you really have to figure out is what is the common difference? What am I adding every time? And we said if you take the right number, subtract the left number, that will give you that. So the process for this is pretty straightforward. Like that will never change. If you do those steps, you should have no problem figuring out any term I give you. I could give you find me the 1,000,000th term. Just plug in the numbers and then do the math. Like I said, you can use a calculator if you need to. Any questions on that? All right, we're going to practice a little bit with the whiteboards. If you did not grab a whiteboard yet and a marker, some of you I think the markers might have been out. Come grab a whiteboard, a little eraser if you. Actually, she wasn't supposed to leave.
I think she went to go to the
Yeah, she was not. She said she could. I said she could step outside. So, yeah, because she was only supposed to step outside, so she can get a referral for that. Any questions before we kind of practice? Everybody has a whiteboard, right?
What about if they don't want to use a whiteboard? Can they use paper?
As long as you write large on it. I mean, you have to obviously waste some paper, but I need to be able to see it so I don't have to walk all the way around. It's large and pretty dark. I didn't get one. There was one in there. Unless somebody tried it and it didn't work. Anybody else that didn't have a marker? You don't have a whiteboard, Elmira?
He needs a marker.
See it? Oh, there's not any over there. Oh, here's one over here. Oh yeah, there's two of the smaller ones. There's one. Hopefully there's one. You need one. Really giving away. Where were you? I just looked. Not right there you weren't, so look.
Yeah, I went down to Nevitt. You can have Nevitt. I was sitting.
I will be asking you. But when I ask you, I say you can step outside, doesn't mean you can walk around. Any questions? Again, this is your exit ticket. Like, you practice this a couple of times, there's no reason why you don't do well on the exit ticket, on this section of it. And we'll review the old stuff before the exit ticket. All right, so let me give you some questions. Here's what I want you to do. You're going to do that in a minute. I want to know, what is that? Write on your whiteboard. Don't say anything. I need to see if people are getting this, and if you say an answer out, then I can't tell if they're getting it. No, you're using these numbers, not the ones we already used. There we go. Good. Easy, right? Should not be difficult stuff. There, small, but I believe, yeah. I see, yeah. I see it was the one after the A looked really big, so I thought that was part of the number. But yeah, I get it. All right, what is this? You can erase, you can keep the 400 on there, I don't care. Good. And they will get a little harder, so don't think it's going to necessarily be quite as easy. No, what did we say the D was? How are we figuring out the D value? How are we figuring this value out? No, most people are good, but we gotta help a few people. How do we figure out the value for D? What did we say D is?
Is right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Is this right for D?
No. Say it again. Tristan, you've already answered the same question. It's how much are we going up by? If you figure out that, I'm going up by 25, right? That's what D is. So a few of you were confused and you were thinking it was one of the numbers. If you don't see A, then we're not pulling one of the numbers. A is what tells you we're pulling one of the numbers out. D stands for difference, common difference. Remember that, difference. And difference in math is subtraction. So we said you could also just say, pick any two numbers next to each other and say, okay, well, 475 subtract 450 is 25. That's the common difference. That's the value of D. And then A1 we said was 400. All of you got that right, but I'll write it. Let's do another one with different numbers. Same thing. Actually, not the same thing. Give me that. The first part, two things to give me though on that one. Just do them both at the same time. I want A3 and I want what D equals for that. Little trickier on the value for D. Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and yes. Yes and no. Yes and no.
Nope.
Yes and yes. Good. Some people got it. There you go. Yes and no, I believe, for yours. Here, I can't see if you added the right thing. That's correct. There we go. So some people caught what happened in this one. Good. These numbers are going down. If you said this, what you're telling me is we're adding 6 every time, because you said 6, which means positive 6. If I had positive 6, I would have had that. So 6 is not the answer. Negative 6 is the answer, which a lot of you caught, most of you actually caught. If here's a quick note to just write down. If the numbers in the sequence are getting smaller, then your value for D has to be negative. And that's the only way numbers can get smaller, is if you're adding a negative. When we have a pattern of addition, like you could divide, but that's not how you find the common difference. This is not based on division, it's based on adding. So the only way they could be getting smaller is to add a negative to it. So once you know it's got to be a negative, then you're just saying, well, what's the value that I would need to add by subtracting the 5 and the 11. Technically, though, remember, we also said we could take any numbers next to each other, like 11 and 5, and say right number. I don't know why I wrote that. We could say the right number, subtract the left number. You have to realize that is not a positive number. 5 subtract 11 is not positive 6. If you have a calculator, which I said you could use, if you put 5 subtract 11, it'll come out with a negative number. So you really won't have to worry about it. Oh, and then this one, by the way, if you didn't check your answer. So those were the answers for that. All right, so next question. Let's go to a sheet that we may use this sheet some next class, we may not. So here's the next thing you have to know how to do on the exit ticket. This is new. We haven't done it. Well, we kind of have done this. Or specifically done it. I'm going to give you a sequence of numbers. And I'm going to ask you, is that sequence an arithmetic sequence or not? How would you figure that out? I'm going to go with, I'll ask Leah that. How would I figure out if that's an arithmetic sequence or not? Like, I'm not asking you to solve and give me a term. I'm asking, is that even an arithmetic sequence or not?
Yes.
Any idea? How would you do it? What's the, like, kind of test to figure out if it is or not? What did we say the very first note we took? Said an arithmetic sequence is a what? Monday for you guys. Well, actually, it's Monday for everybody. Very first thing we said, and well, if you were here, arithmetic sequence is a it was before recursive formula. Before we did anything with the formulas. Arithmetic sequence is a... Nobody has it?
Pattern.
That is the one. It is a pattern of addition. But here's the key. You have to be adding the same thing every single time. So here's your test. And it doesn't take a long time. Sometimes it's easy to see. You'll see it like that on some of the ones I put on the exit ticket. I need to test and see if I am adding the same number every single time. So I would have to look at the sequence of numbers and say, okay, what did I add to go from 4 to 8? So what did I add? I added positive 4, right? What did I add to go from 8 to 12? Same thing, right? And then 12 to 16. Same thing, right? Did I add the same thing every time? Then yeah, that is an arithmetic sequence. That's all you got to do. Now, if the numbers are more difficult, you may have to say, okay, well, I need to say 8 subtract 4. And that'll give you this first 4. And then 12 subtract 8 would give you the second 4. And then 16 subtract 12 would give you the third 4. And then you'd say, yeah, I got the same thing every time I did that. If you can figure it out really easy, then I'm not, you need to show me how you determined it. They're like, show me this. Or if you really want to write it out and show me that, that works too. So now what about the next one? I need to figure out, is that an arithmetic sequence? What do I add to go from negative 11 to 5? Nope. If I add 6, I'd still be at a negative number. If I'm at negative 11, I only add a 6. I got to add a pretty big number, actually. Well. No. How many would I add to 11 to get to 0? Why do you answer that? You'd add 11, right? If you are at negative 11 and you want to get back to even, remember we said negative is like being in debt. If you're in debt $11, how much do I have to give you to get you back to 0? Well, I got to give you $11. You're in debt. So we would have to add 11 just to get to 0, and then 5 more. So we'd have to add 16. Well, it's pretty easy to see we don't add 16 to go from 5 to 0. We'd have to actually add a negative number to that. We also would have to add a 6 to go from here to here. So yeah, we're all over the place. So we are definitely not adding the same number every time on that. So we would say no, that is not an arithmetic sequence. I'm pretty sure I just say well, I don't remember if I say right no or yes, whatever. Something, say whatever you have to write to tell me it's not arithmetic. So this one we would have said yes. I think it's yes and no. I remember what it is. So what about the last one? Is that arithmetic? Yes or no? Are we adding the same number every time?
Yes.
What are we adding?
Oh, that was
Those are all arithmetic down there. Because they're asking you to go ahead and do stuff, so we automatically know. What did I add to go from 12 to 23?
11.
I add 11, right? So I just need to see, am I adding 11 every time? What do I add to go from 23 to 34? Again, I could just say 34 subtract 23. If you're not sure how to figure it out, that's the process way.
11.
I add 11 again, right? 34 subtract 23 is 11. That's how you figure it out if you have tougher numbers. These are pretty easy. I'll tell you right now, I believe there is one on the exit ticket that's a little bit tougher. It's decimals. Still not that tough. And then 45 subtract 34 would also give you 11. So yes, I added 11 every single time. So is that an arithmetic sequence? Yes or no? What do you think, Jocelyn? Yes or no? Yeah, absolutely. I added the same thing every time, so yes, that is arithmetic. That's the only other thing you need to know. So you need to know how to figure out certain terms, how to tell me yes or no, it is or isn't an arithmetic sequence, what the common difference is, how to figure that out. Just sometimes I might just say what's A1 or A3 or A5, and it's already in the sequence, just pull the number out. So what you're doing is on this sheet, I have one, arithmetic sequences sheet. You're going to do, let me tell you what to do, and then I'll let you go if you're, I think you're next. Let me find the page. Oh, why is it going so slow? Not that.
Wi-Fi.
This isn't based on Wi-Fi.
Oh, it's not.
No, it's plugged in. Hardwired. Still waiting. All right, I may have to tell you. On 1 through 6, you are telling me, first of all, is it arithmetic or not? So you're just seeing, am I adding the same thing every time? So that's your first thing you have to tell me. If it isn't, you just write no and you're done. If it is, then you have to pull out some information or figure. Oh, there we go. So is it arithmetic or not? You don't have to do that. If it is, then you have to do number 2. You have to tell me what is the value of D, which is just the difference. What are we adding every time? What is the value for A1, which is just the first term in the sequence? And then I want you to calculate out A101. What is the 101st term in the sequence for everyone that is arithmetic? So you're doing 1 through 6, and then you're also doing 11 through 14, which I'll talk about in a little while when people start to get to it. You can use calculators. If you use these calculators, they don't necessarily, and you're not using your phones for your calculators, these don't necessarily go in the correct order.
They don't?
No, I think some of them actually do the math as you type in the number. So for example, if you said 14 plus 10 times 3, it's going to say 14 plus 10 and then times 3. That's the wrong order. You have to do multiplication first. Remember, that's the whole PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally thing. So you may have to manually make sure with these that you do it in the right order, or just use one of those. With one of those, you type it in exactly as it is in the problem, including the parentheses, like you would literally type in the parentheses where the parentheses are in the equation, and then you hit equals and you should get the right answer. So go ahead, get started. I'll walk around and help. If you can do this, you should be fine on this section for the exit ticket, and then we'll just have to review the old stuff on Friday real quick. We might do a couple review problems on this on Friday. Just
I don't have my paperwork.
Oh, if you don't have it, let me look and see if I have more. If not, I'll have to put it up on the board, and you can just copy them down, the sequence of numbers down. I had a lot. Oh no, that's not it. Oh, I should have asked Miss Thompson to make some copies. She said you could do that. I don't think she's coming back. See if anybody left me. Nope. No. Oh. Raise your hand if you don't have the packet. Let me just see how many people don't have. Did you look? I know you were here.
I love. Oh, it's in my bag. I didn't find it.
I love.
I have 1, 2. I have 2, so I don't really need it myself, I guess. So you can have 1.
Yay! Thank you.
Who else said it? Didn't have 1. You can have that one. Anybody else? No, sir. Let me see if I. Wait, you say no? Willie's gonna go. You can go ahead and go, Willie, and then when he gets back.
My phone is charging.
All right. Thank you. Did anybody else need it? Did you say you needed it? No. I think we're good. All right, so again, 1 through 6. Is it arithmetic? You have to determine whether or not it's arithmetic first. If you say no, then you're done. Move on to the next one. If it's yes, then you need to say, okay, what is the pattern then? Because if it's arithmetic, there would be a pattern. 1 through 6. And then 11 through 14 also, but you just follow the directions on those. These are not the directions on the paper. I'm giving you different directions. Then you tell me what's the first term, and then you calculate out, you figure out what is the 100 first term. That's what A101 means. A101 means what is the 100 first term in that sequence. And if you can do those, then, really shouldn't take long. Most people were done within 15 minutes. I'll tell you how to do the last few, which are just as easy, probably even easier. Let me do attendance in the system real quick, then I'll walk around and help. If you can work together. I don't care if you work together. Check your answers with each other while I'm doing some stuff. Oh, I need to freeze that. If you didn't write the formula down, you should have written it down earlier, but if not, I'll put the formula up in a minute after I do attendance in the focus. Oh, I'm going to stop the recording too, I guess.